I am pleased to announce a guest. The guest is Jason Graves. Who the hell's he? You know, this is the public. That's how they respond to strangers. Strangers have a bad reputation.
Why won't they meet us?
Because strangers have a bad reputation.
But Jason has his own YouTube channel. You can find him on Jason Graves. You know, if there's any video that is critical of AVGN, it's fed to me directly. It comes on my plate. And so he was one of, I'd say, like a little cohort now that I've gotten to know. There was Hat Hole Entertainment, who we interviewed. There was Dylan. Now there's Dancing with Ghosts, who did he mostly like talks about Rex Viper. He comes from a musical background. We'll probably chat with him at some point soon. And then there was Jason.
A little over 2 years ago, I made this video right here. This video right here. It is by far the most viewed thing I have ever made. It was obvious to hardcore longtime fans of Cinemassacre and James Rolfe that he had begun to outsource much of the creative work to these guys who work at a company called Screenwave Media,
who does a retro video game channel focusing on, as far as I can tell, Jason, RPGs. I mean, not exclusively, but widely, right?
Pretty much, yeah, just RPGs. That's like my niche. Super Nintendo ones, like sometimes Sega Genesis ones, a couple PlayStation ones. That's like the
Frankie likes to surround himself with personalities that like RPGs, but he himself does not.
I was talking to Jason, so he joined our Discord, and we were chatting, you know, as we do most nights. And I think I was like, you know, I said something like, I really just like platformers. And he was like, platformers is definitely a boomer genre or something.
I don't know. The thing with like retro games is I associate RPGs and like the good games as like the same thing. That's what they were. They were they had the most going on. They had the most variety.
You're in your like late 20s, right?
Yeah, that's fair to say.
You are very versed in retro games for somebody who missed a lot of them, honestly.
Well,
right?
I wouldn't say that I missed them because I grew up with them. Like, they already exist. There's definitely a different phenomenon for when every retro game ever already existed, as opposed to like being there as they're coming out, like seeing that. Like, I grew up with like a ROM list and like an emulator, and I would just play that all the time.
Well, that's fascinating to me because, like, yeah, I discovered emulators when I was in like middle school, and by that point, it was very exciting to be like, I can play random games that used to be so hard to get a hold of. But by that point, my peak excitement had my childhood excitement had passed. I was now in middle school.
That was my peak excitement when I discovered I could play any game I wanted. Because like as a very young like elementary school kid, I basically just got like hand-me-downs. Like, where is it? This Sega. This one right here was actually my dad's, and it was just like a hand-me-down. So like I had a few games like that I would play as a kid, and then like one day just I discovered the internet, or like our house got internet, and the floodgates just like opened to everything. And that's what really got me into like retro games and stuff.
Did you play on a keyboard?
Oh, no. I had what was called the Microsoft Sidewinder. It was almost like a Sega Genesis controller, and then it had like 6 buttons. The D-pad was really strange. It was kind of like an 8-way, but it was like a disc. I had one of those. It didn't connect with USB either. It used like, it looked like a video port or something.
Yeah, it's like a serial port.
Serial port, yeah. That's a boomer port, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, USB wasn't really ubiquitous. It wasn't universal until I don't know, probably like early 2000s, and it took a while too. Actually, I mean, like FireWire was attempting to be a more universal port at one point. So you might be wondering why I invite Jason on. Well, it's just lovely to have him for one thing, but also EJ now has done 2 kind of major retro video game retrospectives, one on the NES, one on the SNES. They're both uploaded to the main channel. So if you've never seen EJ's deep dives on NES and SNES, it's like some of the best content that any of us have ever put out.
Number 3, Mega Man 3. It's 1991, Holden Beach, North Carolina, in a cottage called Frank Place. It is my older sister's birthday. She has a decent haul of Barbie things, and she's currently posing with her latest prize, Mega Man 3 for the NES. While she looks pleased for the camera, if you pan just a little over, there's somebody else who is losing his mind with joy. Yes, that's me. And yes, I did take custody of the cart many years later. I mean, look at the picture. I already considered myself the true owner the instant I saw it.
And for that matter, you know, like shameless plug to JuntSNES, of course, if you want more in-depth video game content. And also, I know Jason like is into this kind of content and somehow had missed like our Christmas retrospective. So if you haven't seen the Christmas retrospective on retro games, check that out too. That's on this channel. But on one podcast clip, I had done my top at NES, and Jason had kept being like, when are you going to do Genesis? When are you going to do Genesis? I know you grew up with Genesis.
Yeah.
So I finally put together a list, and that's what we're going to talk about right now. Kind of at the last minute, I was like, I swear, I want Jason's like raw reactions to my boomer picks. There's sort of 4 categories. There's the games I owned, and I cut it off. I said before the 5th grade, because at some point you start collecting, you know, you get some Genesis games later in life. I'm including Sega CD in this because I grew up with a Sega CD. I'm not including 32X because I didn't grow up with it, A, and B, there's nothing on the 32X that excites me. I own 2 32X games. I own Knuckles Chaotix and I own Star Wars Arcade. And
that's it.
And I don't think either of them are any good.
Unless you're a big Calibri head, then no, there's not a big... There's nothing really. A lot of potential, but it's just bad timing. Horrible timing for the thing. The thing came out after the Saturn was out in Japan, or like around that time. So there was no room for it. Like everybody who was in the know, like the nerd ass people in the mid 90s that would have bought the 32X knew that there was something better coming right after. So like, why bother?
Is that Sega of America and Sega of Japan not communicating? Yeah.
Yeah, the 32X kind of stole the oxygen of the Saturn. I didn't even know the Saturn came out, but I knew the 32X came out.
My uncle had it. I already thought it was strange to connect. Like, oh, it's like the Sega CD. It's a brand new console, but it's required that you have the Genesis because otherwise it can't function. I already thought that was strange. And then, like, one day I went to his house and there was this fucking mushroom in it, too. I was like, what is happening? The Tower of Power. All right, so there's the ones I owned. You know, that's what makes your taste in a lot of ways. I speak about games that, like, any Genesis list has in them and aren't going to be in my list because I either didn't own them or I'm not excited about them.
We're on the same wavelength. I made both of those lists. I made a list that I know you've talked about you had as a kid, but they aren't good. And I made a list. Yeah. I looked at a bunch of top 10 lists and I'm like, all right, these are all the games that are normally on them. I'm going to grill them if any of these aren't on them.
Yeah, so then I have games I wish I liked. So these are games I have played. And like, I don't know, every couple of years, I kind of like, you know, I'll kind of look at them and be like, maybe I didn't give you a fair shake. I want to like you. And I don't think I do. Then I have finally my favorites. I have 12. I've chosen 12. And then there's some honorable mentions in there. Things I feel like I ought to mention, but they don't.
I feel like I want to make a Doug Walker joke where you're like, I'm going to go one up from Doug Walker.
Why 12? Because I like to go one beyond Doug Walker.
Why top 11? Because I like to go one step beyond.
Predictions. Okay, Virtual Bart will be mentioned. Yep. You're going to talk about Virtual Bart.
Totally.
2, Power Rangers, the movie.
Yeah, obviously.
The game, which I also played for the first time today.
You want to just ruin the segment?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do it.
No, how about you? Okay.
Steamroll him.
I'll stop.
Steamroll him, Jason.
Sega games I owned before the 5th grade. Mortal Kombat 1. I was a huge Mortal Kombat fan. I don't know if I've ever really talked about this. When I was in 4th grade, maybe 4th grade, I belonged to some, I barely remember this. All I know is that it was significant to me. I belonged to some kind of message board related to Mortal Kombat role-playing. And we made up Mortal Kombat characters of ourselves, and we got in intense fights about who would, really brutal stuff. And I don't remember.
Did you come up with your own Sonic character too?
Yeah, it's like bordering on like horny DeviantArt type stuff.
Was this like early internet or was this like pre-internet bulletin boards?
This is like it's AOL for sure, but I was going to a website in a web browser.
Okay.
I know that much. And I think I had a GeoCities website called Frankie's World. I wish I had an archive of it. It'd be great. And it had me. I was doing like an impression of Yoda and stuff. So there was like a part of it that was like about my Star Wars fandom, and whatever the fuck it was that I was up to with Mortal Kombat was on that website. It's a shame that it was a huge URL too. I remember the hosting. They didn't have like vanity hosting really, so you had to go to like geocities.com/Times Square, because they had like different instances that were located.
Right.
Sonic and Knuckles. But not Sonic 3. Didn't own it. I rented it a couple times. It was magic when I rented it. Power Rangers the movie, Sonic 2, Batman Forever, Midway's Batman Forever, Mortal Kombat 3, Mortal Kombat 2, X-Men, the first X-Men game, Vector Man, which was purchased after the Sega CD. My dad got me a Sega CD. He was like, you need this. It's a CD.
It's the future.
Was he wrong?
We had one of those speaker systems, you know, like the silver ones. And we had like a couple of bass speakers in the back of the living room that didn't work that great. And I remember the Sega CD functioned as a CD player. And I haven't thought about this in a really long time. We had gone to see Phantom of the Opera when I was in 3rd grade, and they got the soundtrack. And I remember my dad wanted to like pop it on the Sega CD to like show off the sound system. So we're just sitting quietly in the living room to like, Angel of Music, Guide and Guardian. And he's like, that's why I bought the Sega CD.
And you're sort of proud of it too, probably.
Yeah, I'm like, he's finding some use in this thing.
This is the game thing that I like, and he's using it for something.
See, this was good for this family.
If you're gonna get a CD player, you might as well like make sure it plays video games too, because why not?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the PS2 with DVD, that would really.
Yeah.
I used my Dreamcast primarily as a CD player.
World of Illusion, Mickey Mouse's World of Illusion, Sonic 1, Roar of the Beast, Disney's Roar of the Beast.
Oh, wow.
Since this doesn't appear in any other list, I'll talk about Roar of the Beast right now. Disney didn't have the chutzpah to make a Beauty and the Beast game for Genesis. They made a Beauty and the Beast game for NES, which blows ass. And they made one for SNES too. I have no idea if that one's good or not. But for Sega,
aren't there two? Isn't there like
there's
one?
two.
Yeah.
So
there's a girl version and a boy version.
I think they realized we can't make like if we just make a game called Beauty and the Beast, it's not going to sell to the core video game demographic of boys. But if we make like just Roar of the Beast, we're going to cut out the potential girl market. So they made two. They made a pretty horrible platformer called Roar of the Beast, and they made an unplayable point and click called Bell's fucking Walk Through Town or something. And they're both awful. But Roar of the Beast, your sprite is humongous. You can either walk as the beast or you can crawl as the beast. If you're crawling, you can bite at shit. And if you're walking, you can punch at shit. It's mostly bats and spiders and things that are impossible to swat at. It's a terrible game. The first level is just you walking through the castle, but it's like a Hanna-Barbera loop of the castle. Like, when does this level end? And then you eventually like end up in the snow for an hour, fighting wolves. There's really an absence of Beauty and the Beast content in it. It's mostly just the beast walking through castles. But at some point, you have to like quickly collect all the Beauty and the Beast characters, like Mrs. Potts and Lumiere and stuff, out of the castle. And finally, you climb to the top of the castle and battle Gaston, and you win. It's very hard and very bad. See, Sunsoft they're not the silver bullet that I sometimes make them out to be.
Oh, they stunk. By the time you get to the 16-bit generation, they were terrible.
Yeah. Okay, Virtual Bart.
Virtual Bart. Virtual Bart.
Ultimate MK3. And then when we go to the Sega CD, Kamen Rider Zo, I've talked about that before. It was Kamen Rider in Japan. In North America, they made a show that was marketed alongside Power Rangers. In fact, they appeared on Power Rangers as an introduction. It was like an MCU sort of concept. but they made Masked Rider, and it failed quickly, kind of like VR Troopers. Although VR Troopers lasted for like 3 seasons. But anyway, I saw a Sega CD game called Masked Rider, and I was like, cool. And I picked it up, and it was the Kamen Rider Japanese one, and it was very much like they showed you video and said press A while you're watching the video. But then of course I got in. It was kind of like, we had no internet, so it was my first exposure to like Japanese Sentai type stuff. And so just getting to watch it on the Sega CD was kind of cool. It was like an import that I didn't expect. I saw it in a Kmart too.
A localized import.
Yeah, it had terrible voice acting. I think like an adult lady doing like the Japanese child's voice and stuff.
Hey, Hiroshi, don't forget practice tomorrow.
He's following me. He's following me. He can't leave me alone.
Hey, you. Why are you following Hiroshi?
There's some really gruesome shit in it too. Like he fights like a spider with all these teeth and like blood all around its mouth. So then there was Power Rangers for Sega CD. Same concept. You watch the first season of the show and you press buttons while it plays.
Did it really have that much of the show? I thought it was like 2 episodes.
It goes up to Goldar had a Zord, whatever that episode was. So I think it's like half of the first season, something like that.
That's kind of impressive to stick on just like a CD-ROM. I mean, I guess I don't know how many episodes a season is, but like,
I mean, they don't play the whole thing. They truncate it. They edit the hell out of it.
Just the fight scenes.
Yeah, you're not like pressing buttons during like Bulk and Skull.
There's no like Heavy Rain-esque dialogue choices. That would be awesome.
But it was. I remember it being exciting to be like, oh, I got to the part where the Green Ranger finally attacks them, and so he's to a child, there's something to it.
It has like the virtual Bart. I'm gonna back up and we're gonna talk about virtual Bart because I want to. If I can say anything about virtual Bart, they got the look of the showdown. You're existing in the Simpsons world, and that's the best thing I could say about it.
Yeah, I can say a few more nice things about it. Then there's Sewer Shark, which I really enjoyed. That was the pack-in game for Sega CD, at least for a little while.
You mean Shit Shark?
Yeah, is that what James calls it? More like Shit Shark.
No, all I have is a 2-word review. Shit Shark.
For this game, all I have is a 2-word review. Shit Shark.
The review you had on Shark Sandwich was merely a 2-word review, just said, shit sandwich.
You can't even print that in a newspaper. Sonic CD. And then finally, I call it here Mortal Kombat CD, but I had Mortal Kombat 1. You get some more voice samples and some better music, and you also get an opening cutscene of the commercial it's the kid in the alleyway going Mortal Kombat, and all the other kids rushing towards him. That's kind of badass, but notoriously it has load times.
I played through the arcade version of Mortal Kombat 1 fairly recently, and I had a great time.
I think the arcade version, I think there's a little more there, but the Genesis port is kind of poopy diarrhea, if you don't mind me saying.
Do you know the blood code for the Genesis version off the top of your head?
ABACABB.
Bam, you got it.
Is that it?
Nice. I didn't know that was in there.
Yeah, it's there, man.
Where it's harder to say it out loud than it is to just like do it.
Like you see the text go red, and it's just like yes.
Yeah, and then doesn't he go excellent?
Get over here!
Sega Lord X, yours and mine. He's reviewed now a few different ROM hacks that kind of restore arcade features to the Genesis versions of the games. Like, there's like Mortal Kombat Arcade Edition, Mortal Kombat 2 Arcade Edition. I've tried them. I mean, in a world where MAME exists, I mean, like, I would just play
what's the point?
All right, so here's some games that like are seminal on these Sega platforms, and they completely missed me. So it really makes a clown out of me that these are missing. Streets of Rage 2, all of the Streets of Rage, but Streets of Rage 2, of course I've played it since, and it's enjoyable. But the truth is, Power Rangers the movie is a ripoff of it, and that's what I played. Hyperstone Heist. Shinobi 3, which I've of course played and I actually think is great. Gunstar Heroes, which I've now played and think is great. Contra Hardcore was my next one. Batman, which like I love Batman NES. Sega Lord X loves Batman for Genesis. I'm not seeing it. Like,
too slow.
Yeah, slow as fuck. Castlevania Bloodlines, which I think is great. The Earthworm Gyms, which I think are pretty great. The animation's amazing. The gameplay itself, I don't know. There's something like a little off about the. Yeah. It needs to be a little easier.
It gets too hard.
Golden Axe, which honestly, the Genesis ones don't impress me all that much, but the arcade sequel, that one is actually quite fun. That's like more akin to Simpsons or X-Men, that caliber of arcade beat 'em up. Outrun, Phantasy Star, Shining Force, Toe Jam and Earl, Zombies Ate My Neighbors. I didn't have any of these games. So, okay. These are games I wish I liked. I think this will actually be the best.
This is the best category. The Genesis is the system of games with great ideas, but then when you actually play them, they kind of suck. So I'm excited to hear this one.
Lion King.
Yes.
And, I actually played it finally on the Disney collection that came out for Switch. I brute forced it with the rewind feature. And I was like, this thing is broken, frankly.
Yeah.
I actually did beat it, and it was quite an accomplishment.
Yeah.
But it is too hard. It's not as fun as like Aladdin.
Well, it hits you with a brick wall right away. Like the second stage is you're on the thing, you got to jump over the pigs, and it's like that's as far as anybody ever gets.
Yeah, it's true, and that's not even close to the hardest.
Oh yeah, there's like 10 stages after that.
Pinocchio, I love the animation. It came out by was it Virgin Games, the same people who did Aladdin. So great animation, but I played it for, God, I don't know, 25 minutes. And I was like, when do you do anything in this fucking thing? It's this high diddly D for, like just repetitive looping stages. And I finally just gave up.
Yeah, remember there was another one, it was like the Jungle Book, which was...
That was my next one.
Oh, right. Yeah, it was like the same kind of like great animation, but it's repetitive and too hard.
So basically you want to like every Disney game, and if it doesn't click with you, you're like, it should, but it doesn't.
Yeah, well, because these were those licenses were massive at the time. I mean, those movies were taking over the world. But I'll add that the ones, specifically Jungle Book and Pinocchio, and maybe Lion King, where the animation actually really is very faithful to the movies, and then the games don't, because Aladdin is the elephant in the room. Aladdin was awesome.
It's kind of a double-edged sword, because like the better animation you have in like an old Sega Genesis game, like the more limited you're going to be moving the character, which kind of leads to just clunky game design that it's just not fun to play. It's nice to look at. It was great to print like magazine screenshots, but like actually playing the game.
Well, some of the graphics on Genesis blow me away, where I'm like, does the 32-bit era get that much better than this? I mean, like like Contra Hardcore.
Here's a game that I doubt you're going to bring up on your own, but I'll bring it up here. Out of This World. You played that? You know that?
I've never played it.
That's a game that Tim Rogers, who I know EJ likes, once called the greatest video game of all time. He counted down like the top 50 or whatever greatest games ever on his blog like a decade ago. And that was what he called the greatest game of all time. It's like a cinematic platformer that I hate.
Yeah.
It's not fun to play.
It kind of plays like a Prince of Persia in a way, but it's very cinematic, story driven.
That's the pinnacle of like incredible animation just hampering you actually playing the game.
Yeah, it feels like there's a delay to every single one of your actions. It's like one of those kind of games.
Yeah, so Contra Hardcore, I just love the way it looks. I also love the way it plays. I love everything about it, except I can't play it because it's too fucking hard.
Yeah.
Sonic 3D Blast. I actually think that like the view is cool. That's where you get the first bits of like the Sonic Adventure music, and I don't know, there's something about it that I want. You get that really awkward 3D animation in the opening intro. Do you remember that?
That's not awkward. That's the best thing that's on a Genesis cartridge.
Yeah, it's great. So there's all kinds of things, and I like the idea of Sonic innovating on the Genesis, but the game itself just...
it's boring. It's a collectathon. It sucks.
I like how they released it on the Saturn, being like, maybe you think this is the new Sonic.
To this day, I'm like morbidly curious about the Sega Saturn because I'm so unfamiliar with it. But Sega Lord X would have told me something interesting by now, and I've watched a lot of these videos. And
I imported a bunch of stuff from Japan.
I was so disappointed in Madden 97 on the Saturn.
Yeah, Batman Forever. I wish I liked Batman Forever because I like that movie.
Kiss me, kill me, whatever that U2 song is.
That's the one nobody talks about. Everybody always talks about the Seal song.
Yeah, no, there was a whole soundtrack. The Flaming Lips was on that.
Yeah, tell me, Doctor, do you like the circus?
Tell me, Doctor, do you like the circus?
Well, that almost seems like a game you'd like, though, right? Because that's the Mortal Kombat like beat 'em up clone, though. That's like combining two things that you like.
Yeah, and I actually don't hate the graphics. It's got like a Batman Forever je ne sais quoi. Like Riddler looks very interesting at the end if you've ever seen him, if you've ever watched like a long play of it or anything. But Midway made it, and they tried to adapt the Mortal Kombat engine as a beat 'em up, and
they weren't done with that either. Like they went on to make like Mortal Kombat mythologies,
right?
They really tried to make that like Mortal Kombat, but it's a beat 'em up concept work. And
okay, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the fighting game. I wish I liked that because again, it's got all the cool music. I love Power Rangers, but it's a dud. I think that's the one where all of the Rangers' helmets are the Red Ranger's helmet, but colored differently. But the Zord battles look cool. It doesn't play well, and it's shit. There later was on the SNES, there was a Power Rangers fighting game where you fight as the Zords and stuff. It looks amazing. It plays amazing. That's a great fucking game. Yeah. This one, Castle of Illusion. I'll talk later about World of Illusion, but I like it. I do. I love it on the Sega Master System. But Castle of Illusion for Genesis, I don't know. Throwing the apples. The sprite of Mickey doesn't really do it for me. The backgrounds don't really do it for me. It's not quite there. They adapted it later, many years later, onto the Xbox 360 as a 3D platformer. I think it works infinitely better on there. As Gloria and I have played through it a few times. It's really fun. And it's got kind of like a playful Disney sense of humor to it. It's got like as you're playing, there's like a narrator in the background. It's like, Mickey kept trudging through the forest, looking for his beloved Minnie.
Suddenly, Mickey found himself catapulted into the clouds.
On that same note, Mickey Mania, which has the best graphics of any of them, but I think is too hard.
Yeah, and then there's a Sega CD version, right?
Yeah, which is like a little better, but not better enough, I'd say.
They ported that to PlayStation too. They were really proud of that one. Yeah.
It looks great. It truly. It's the kind of game you can get away with putting to the PlayStation.
I love how Mickey Mania, like most of the stages have their own like gimmick that you just have to learn. I love games like that where it's like they're constantly like just throwing new shit at you every level. Battletoads is on Genesis. That's the game that like started the whole new shit every stage and just ridiculously hard.
Vector Man's a bit like that.
Oh man, Vector Man. There's a stage in Vector Man that I can't beat. You're like on a freaking, there's like these things crawling up a wall trying to get you. I've never gotten past it. That's the problem with games that throw new shit at you constantly, is like you can't always practice the more intricate stuff they throw at you later because they're late in the game and you get a game over, you get to restart.
This next one I'm a little on the fence about. Mortal Kombat 2, okay? When I was a kid, I was not very critical of Mortal Kombat 2. As I've gotten older, Mortal Kombat 2 is bullshit.
The difficulty? Or?
Yeah, the computer cheats, but like the game itself is like, it's way better than 1. Like the gameplay, like if you're playing against somebody.
I never played with people, so my whole experience was fighting against the computer, who was obviously reading my inputs.
Yeah, 2 and 3 cheat really hard. Even on like the easiest difficulty, they just...
Somehow when I was a kid, I ripped through the whole game. Like I was super good at it. And now I play it now, and I always am very successful for the first 3 fights. And then I hit this brick wall of difficulty on the 4th fight. I'm like,
it feels predetermined. Like before you start the fight, the computer is like, you will not win this one. This is it. This is when the new quarter goes in.
Okay, TMNT tournament fighters. I mean, like, of course I'd love to have a great TMNT fighting game, but this ain't it. In all of its iterations, the SNES, the NES. Wolverine Adamantium Rage. I love the other X-Men titles on Genesis. This one is a total fucking dud. Animaniacs. I love the Animaniacs. I love the graphics on this thing. And they tried to come up with something original that, you know, where it's not just an action platformer. They tried to come up with kind of a cool puzzle game where you can switch between the 3 characters and have different abilities, but it just doesn't really add up to much for me.
Fingerprints.
No. Fingerprints. I don't think so.
No. Fingerprints. I don't think so.
Beavis and Butthead, which it is definitely funny, but you can burp and fart.
I forgot that game existed. I've always wanted to beat that game, but that's another too fucking hard one. It's like, it's a point and click styled game, but like even when you know what you're doing, it's too like, I've looked up a guide and just been like, all right, you gotta go here. And then like actually executing that, it's insane.
This sucks more than anything that has ever sucked before.
I remember there was a Super Nintendo version that
one's different game.
It's different because I remember my friend had the Genesis version and you're like, oh, I'm going to get it for the Super Nintendo. And it's completely different.
They use the exact same assets. The graphics are the exact same. The levels are the exact same. Just the way that they, like the game that they put around those stages are completely different.
I think it's just side-scrolling action in Super Nintendo, but yeah, same assets. You can't burp and fart at will. I don't think.
Yeah, I wanted to burp and fart. Damn it!
The next one is Bart's Nightmare. Look, let me broaden my statement. If it's Simpsons, I love it and I want it to be great. And Bart's Nightmare is not great. That or I didn't own it because I didn't own it, and I didn't try to brute force it. I didn't virtual Bart it.
In an alternate universe where you had that and not virtual Bart, you would just have them swapped right now. You would be like, oh, Bart's Nightmare is great, but virtual Bart, I could never get into that one.
It's probably true. Batman Returns for Sega CD. So Sega Lord X, we got to bring him up.
It's the Sega Lord X. That's his calling card.
He hates Batman Returns for the Sega Genesis. It's slow, it's gray, and it really packs a punch. But he loves these fucking Batmobile scenes. And I was like, okay, they must be really tits. And so I played it. I have tried to play it a lot. They're not that great. They're really quite boring. And I wish I loved it because I love Batman Returns the movie.
Meow.
And then finally, this is my last title for games I wished I liked, is Bubsy, the first Bubsy.
Oh, that's a good one.
You know, I like mascot platformers.
Yeah.
Boomer.
They're sassy. They're cool. One-liners.
Sassy.
Didn't just get all fat and sassy.
And they have like garbled audio. More like a bridge too short.
More like a bridge too short.
More like a French game shark. I have an older sister. She's 3 years older, and she was not into games. So games in my house were only sourced for me, and that was birthday and Christmas generally. You know, occasion. We weren't the kind of family that you get an A+ on a test, you don't get a fucking video game for it, right? So, but I had these friends. It was 3 boys. 2 were twins, and they had an older brother. They were one of those families. They had a Genesis and they had a Super Nintendo, and it was insane to me. I was like, imagine having both. And they had Bubsy, and they're like, here you go. I played it for months, I feel like. You know, because you're a child and you just want it to work. And I remember kind of liking it, but yeah, of course, playing it now, the falling damage alone.
Was that falling damage? They put falling damage in their 2D platform game?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but was the cartridge like elongated?
It was.
It was like bigger. It had like ridges on the side. I want to say it was ribbed for my pleasure.
That's because Sega didn't produce the cartridges themselves. Whenever you see that, it's because like EA or whatever, or Accolade or whatever, the company like had their own deal to produce their own cartridges. That's why some of them are oddly shaped and have like a yellow tab, or they're like bigger.
I'd be interested in a ROM hack for Bubsy where there's no falling damage. Would the game be significantly
Give Bubsy a life bar. I think that would fix the game. Well, it's like Sonic, except you get killed in one hit, and who wants to play that?
Ah, you make an excellent point. All right, honorable mentions. Arrow the Acrobat 1 and 2. I think it's kind of fun. Nothing to write home about. Jason's waggling his head.
I don't know. It's just a generic. I feel like there's 10 million Arrow the Acrobats on the system.
Well, okay, give me another Arrow.
I don't know. I mean, is it any better than like Zoop 2 or whatever that is?
Are you thinking of Zool? Because
I'm thinking of Zool 2. I am thinking of
part
Zool
of the
2.
same franchise. He's the bad guy from Arrow the Acrobat.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I thought you were talking about Zoop.
There's Zoop.
No, Zoop is like, yeah, it's a different game. I got wires crossed.
It's a puzzle game.
Then there was I spoke about this on the show a couple months ago, Demolition Man, also for the Sega CD, where you can hear Stallone go, heads up, heads up.
Have you ever played The Lawnmower Man on Sega?
No, but I hear the graphics are insane.
The graphics are insane. That's a game that I want to like, but don't.
But I think Demolition Man's a pretty cool arcade shooter. I think if it was an arcade game and you could pay to win, it'd be fun. This is just Puyo Puyo, but Robotnik's Mean Beam Machine. I think it's worth
Classic.
mentioning. Hook. Fuck. Hook is good. I mean, they made Skyblazer based on it for the SNES.
Oh, right.
Don't worry, Jason. McDonald's Treasureland Adventure. It's right here in the honorable mentions. So
Really?
it's on the favorites.
Thank you. I think you just put that on just so I wouldn't make fun of you.
I swear I didn't. I played it. I played through it recently. I thought it was pretty good.
Is it better than the bootleg version of
him taking out his chicken nuggets? Mega Turrican, which is part of the Super Turrican franchise. I think it's a fun little game. You ever play it? Mega Turrican? Yeah,
No.
Yeah, give it a try. It's fun. Tiny Toons Buster's Hidden Treasure. Yeah, it's good. It's pretty good. I slagged it off last time I spoke about it, but you know what? You could do worse with your boomer platformers. Toy Story. I don't hate this game. I hate parts of it for sure, but
yeah, it's like Donkey Kong Country, like right?
It's very ambitious.
Yeah, and there's a first person shooter section.
Oh man, there's a Metal Gear Solid stealth section. There's so many. Like that's another game that's like every level's a whole new thing.
Yeah. So it's like you got to respect it on some level. This one, nobody will ever share with me as an honorable mention, but Toxic Crusaders. I just think the graphical style is fun. I think the fact that it exists in the first place is kind of amazing. And it plays okay. If you were looking for a TMNT alternative, you could do worse. Now, there's one other thing I want to mention. I didn't ever expect to bring this up. We used to have a little ritual in my house. Now, yeah, we didn't get games when we got an A+, but we did get video game magazines when we were sick.
Oh, interesting.
Ooh.
You get a cold, you go to the pharmacy to pick up your prescription, and there were video game magazines in a magazine area.
What was your magazine of choice?
Was it Game Informer?
I feel like that came later. Like EGM maybe, and I know that was
Yeah.
one.
Electronic Gaming Monthly.
You got it.
Yes.
No Sega Visions that didn't sneak in there?
I had Sega Visions and Nintendo Power.
Oh my god.
At different periods of time. And PC Gamer. PC Gamer was the other one I had. I would get PC Gamer just for the demos.
There was a Star Wars magazine, I remember. Star Wars Insider? I remember Darth Maul was on the fucking front cover, and I was like,
oh, hell yeah.
What's this going to be?
I'm like that now.
So anyway, we would get this magazine, and normally I would flip right to the codes. Are there any codes for games I have that I don't know about yet? Codes were just such a fun aspect of video games. There was one for a game called Rings of Power, ironically. I have never played this game to this day, but I remember that the EGM or whatever said that there was a nudity code in it. You could put in some buttons and you'd see tits.
Oh my god.
There's a tempest in me.
There's a tempest in me.
So I looked it up, and I looked up boob code, Rings of Power, and it came up, and I finally got to see the tits.
You have not seen what I have seen.
I swear to God, I put the game on like a Christmas list when I was a kid. It was like Rings of Power. So
you could have flown that under the radar. Like your parents wouldn't have suspected a thing.
All just to see the worst like video game boobs. Yeah. It's possible that when I saw that code, I mean, we're talking probably second or third grade. It's possible I had never seen a naked boob before, and this was my opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, this was before the internet, so like it makes sense.
Right.
It was made by Naughty Dog, the makers of The Last of Us.
So let's finally go to the favorites in descending order, right? Castlevania Bloodlines, number 12.
All the way down at 12?
Yeah, look, I didn't own it, so
okay, all right,
immediate bias. But I think it's a great game, and I want to give it its due. Number 11, Virtual Bart. Shall we talk about?
Oh
Virtual
my
Bart?
freaking lord! You wouldn't. No. You just said Castlevania Bloodlines, and then followed it with Virtual Bart.
It's my list.
Right now, I'm the stand-in for the audience. These are the comments you're going to get, Frankie.
Just to defend Virtual Bart for a moment, my debate partner and colleague Jason Graves, you've heard him give credit to games such as Battletoads for having diverse play styles.
Okay.
Virtual Bart is exactly that. You get 6 different levels, all of varying quality. One, you throw tomatoes at your
You can't hit anybody. It's impossible.
It's super easy. You just have to get an axe for it. There's a total finesse to it.
Get good at the tomato game in Virtual Bart.
It's funny. Like Skinner bends down to tie a shoe and he waggles his ass, and you can't. And you're allowed to hit him only during that moment. Otherwise, you can't hit adults or you lose the game. The conceit of the game, by the way, the story is Bart's at the Springfield Elementary Science Fair, and I think Martin or somebody has a virtual reality machine that he goes into.
While he's walking through the science fair, though, the game must have been made before The Simpsons had like a code on like how to draw characters, because there are all sorts of just wacky fucking kids in the background of just that one shot of him walking by.
The music's not their best. It's like a Anyway, there's one where you play a dinosaur. Bart is like a dinosaur version of himself, and it's like just a platformer in caveman times, and it's quite funny. Again, you run into caveman Barney Gumble, and he's like, wagga, wagga, wagga. Wagga, wagga, wagga.
Oh, the voice clips are great. That was something I noted. I'm like, oh, this has so many like Homer, and just like shit like that, just in the game.
What's the Crazy Taxi Simpsons game?
Road Rage.
I remember that being like so mind blowing that they had like full voice clips in it.
I promise I'll try my best not to throw up. Why, you're drunker than I am.
There was like a motorcycle one, like it's the post-apocalypse, and you have to race in the sort of Mode 7 style.
That one's not bad. That one's like a Road Rash ripoff. That one I thought was fun.
Auto accidentally runs you over a lot. I think the worst one is you're a pig, Bart, and you
I thought that one was cute.
You know, I'm recognizing a theme as I talk through a lot of these games, whether it's Lion King, Roar of the Beast, or Pig Bart. If I'm on all fours, I feel vulnerable to attack. You can actually bounce on his ass. Yeah. And what I find is I just bounce the whole time to get myself out of that mode. But you have to survive like a slaughter factory. That's the concept there.
There's a lot of season 1 references in this game. And I think the wine guy from like the Bart Goes to France episode is one of the slaughter people.
Yeah, it's like a Krusty the Clown slaughterhouse. And so it's like clowns chasing pigs.
That is the thing about all these early Simpsons games. Even the arcade game, it's like, they don't even know what The Simpsons is yet.
That's like, I was sick the last few days. And the best thing about being sick, aside from getting video game magazines where you learn about nudity codes, I got to beach up and play some video games. When do I ever get to play any video games anymore? And so I brought in my N64 into the bedroom, got my wireless controller, and I was like, well, I'm just going to play a bunch of N64. And I found myself playing a bunch of Chef's Love Shack from South Park.
Hell yeah.
And I actually think of all those horrible early South Park games, that's the best one. It's the most South Parkish. But to your point, it's all season 1 jokes. It's all Scuzzlebutt and Patrick Duffy for a leg and
Weight gain 4,000 or whatever.
Like throw the beefcake cans into
cheesy poofs. Yeah.
Don't let Kitty have your pot pie. So we haven't named all the virtual Bart levels because we want to be up all night. There's the baby Bart where you are baby Bart and you have to swing your diaper into things.
Awesome joke I caught in that one. In the beginning, when Homer's taking Bart out of the crib, you can see pictures of Homer and Marge behind him. And Marge has 2 pictures, one for the top of her hair and one for her face. So the humor's pretty good. I think it just plays like garbage and is a bad game.
I think you're talking yourself into liking virtual Bart.
There are aspects of the game I thought were cool. But at the end of the day, it's a lazy minigame compilation, and the minigames aren't good.
Well, look, that might be true. But given how bad all console versions of all Simpsons games are, I think it might be the best one. Sometimes minigames is your only way out of these bad licenses.
I want to say no, but then I don't have an example to point to otherwise that proves you wrong. So
there were a few on Game Boy that are pretty horrible. There's like a Jack and the Beanstalk one where you're Bart. Nobody ever talks about. Talk about games I wish I loved. There's a Treehouse of Horror game for Game Boy Color.
Oh my God.
And it's fucking horrible. I would love to play a Game Boy Color Simpsons game, but it's not good. But a game I never knew existed there was a DS version of the 2007 The Simpsons game. Everybody knows the one that came out in 07.
That was on everything. That was the era where they just put a game on just ports on everything.
But you remember DS would always get a demake of the same game. And sometimes it would have surprising results. I'm not saying this is great, but it's got like full animated cutscenes from The Simpsons that I didn't expect to see. Actually, it wasn't terrible. Like if they had released something like that in the 16-bit, if it had just been basic.
Why didn't they just make a basic platformer?
Yeah.
They never went that route. I mean, kudos to them for not going that route, but at the same time, why did they not go that route?
Yeah, or even just port the arcade,
Yeah.
Who made Virtual Bart? Acclaim. So Acclaim is probably one of the shittier.
It's like cash grab pump out factory.
And then the final one is Water Slide.
Dreadful.
And it's quite funny because if you go the wrong way, you run into Homer's big naked ass and he goes, "Wah!"
That's funny the first time it happens, but I only played the minigame one time, and that happened like 12 times. It's just in like one play.
You must not know. On the back of the bathing suit are little lines.
Are you
show you
kidding me?
And that's how you're supposed to know.
No, I did not catch that.
Well, look, I was a child with this game, and I had to learn everything I needed to know
to get through it.
All right, so that's Virtual Bart. I mean, I returned to it, and I enjoy it. X-Men 2: The Clone Wars. It's a bit hard. That's my only real complaint about it, but it follows the Phalanx story, popular storyline for X-Men in the 90s. I mean, this is just X-Men in the 90s through and through. Some of the best graphics on the console, and you get to play as way more X-Men than in the first one. You can unlock Magneto at one point. It's great.
What do you think of the game just starting before the title screen?
I think it's just a cool creative decision. They wanted to launch you into the action. And there is something epic about like when the title comes up after you've beaten a level where you're like, oh yeah.
That game mixes it up by having like little puzzles. Now, I wouldn't even know if I'd call them puzzles, but just like other things you need to do to progress through the level that isn't just killing people. And I think that really helps the game flow more.
And it's not obvious which character you're meant to play. Like you want certain characters for certain levels, and you sort of have to discover that yourself.
Maybe a hot take, bad music, bad sound effects. Because I think it uses the gems, that's like the
gems.
Sega Lord Exploit talks about gems all the goddamn time.
The sound and music used in Vector Man were produced using the Gem Sound driver. For many titles, this would be an automatic thumbs down, and a quick note that everything you are about to hear sounds like garbage.
That was a sound font that Sega of America developed to be like developer friendly, to just put music in the game super quick and easy. But the result was a bunch of games, sounded similar, which isn't good because you want your game to sound distinct. And 2, just like...
It sounds like farts.
Objectively, it sounds like shit. I think X-Men 2 is like a great soundtrack away from being like an all-timer.
I do like the sound effects, I think. The kind of farty explosions. I sort of like those explosions. I put Sewer Shark next. It's just very memorable and funny to me. You're encountering this fat guy eating pizza who's bitching at you if you didn't do a good job.
Don't forget now, a clean sewer
Is a happy sewer.
I like that. It's got a certain ring, you know.
You have your co-pilot who's yelling at you the entire time. I just remember it felt such like a next-gen experience for me when I was a kid. Yeah, the shooter element of it is kind of fun. There's also like full video cutscenes that are all pretty entertaining. The conceit of this game is that you are living in kind of a dystopian future. There's a market for people who shoot mutant rodents in the sewers. And for those who are successful at doing so, get to go to a beach called Solar City. I don't know why. Aside from the fact that you're shooting rodents the whole time, and you're trying to like preserve your power. If you just like spread bullets the whole time, you'll run out of fuel and you'll die. So you have to be a bit more precise. And also you have a robot following you that tells you which directions you're going to go in for the next piece of the game. So he'll be like, 9er, 6. And you have to remember that and go up, down, or whatever.
3, 6, 12.
If you go the wrong way, you smack into a wall and you die.
The guy you're replacing, he had that same tough guy smirk on his face that you do. Till he hit the wall. They're out there now blotting him up with handy wipes.
I think it's fun. It was a good pack-in. And I remember I scratched the disc too much because I was a child. And I bought a replacement for like 30 cents at Funko Land.
Funko Land.
It's crazy how fast games depreciated back then.
Yeah, nobody wanted this Sega CD pack-in but me.
I remember with all those like FMV games, I remember getting Rebel Assault 2 and just being like, oh wow. This is cinema.
This is like another Star Wars movie.
FMV games are great to look back and like reminisce about when you can just get a stack of them or just like a bunch of ISOs and just plow through a bunch of them and just like laugh at them. But if you're in the 90s and you have to choose between your pregnant girlfriend or a game, and you get a FMV game, that's kind of a kick to the balls.
In late 1992, I was trying to support a Sega Genesis, a TurboGrafx 16, a Sega CD, a Super Nintendo, a Game Gear, and a pregnant girlfriend. So you can imagine that some things had to be left behind.
And you're going to have a lot of apologizing to do to your pregnant girlfriend. I'm sorry I chose Sewer Shark over you and the baby. Next up, Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3. They released Mortal Kombat 3, and then they released Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3, so you had to buy a second game to effectively get the DLC. So you can play as Scorpion, because for some reason he wasn't in the original.
Right. 3. Mortal Kombat 3, it felt like a blip because I only remember there being an Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3.
Yeah.
Like, there's no reason to play 3 now that you've got Ultimate.
No. But as a child, I played the fuck out of 3. Because I got Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 like a year later. See, you had to cycle these things at Christmas. So whatever you got at Christmas. And next up, I put Mortal Kombat, the first one. I have a lot of fun memories. I have a lot of fond memories of that dog.
Got a lot of fond memories of that dog.
I think that the digitized humans in that one are the most charming of all 3.
I agree with that. I don't know why. I think they didn't touch up the details enough or something, but they seem more human.
All right, next up, Power Rangers the movie. So it's by far the best Power Rangers game from this era.
Ooh, no, the Super Nintendo one's better. Not the fighting game, the beat 'em up. The Super Nintendo beat 'em up.
I disagree.
Better. It has like platforming elements too, which are okay.
Remember earlier I said like the helmets are clones?
Is that the Super Nintendo of that going on?
Yeah, and they all look like bodybuilders in this one, which I hate. The Zord battle looks cool.
The Genesis one, what I thought was interesting is that it has a time limit, but the time limit doesn't kill you. It just saps your health. And there are parts in the game where they give you too many enemies to actually beat in that amount of time. And they expect you to like daisy chain the health power-ups to stay alive. That was pretty cool, I thought.
Well, the reason I love this one is it's a Streets of Rage clone, so it plays nicely. You fight through kind of a summarized version of the movie, the 1995 movie. And then in the middle of the game, they go, hey, remember the time when we had a show? And then you play a bunch of episodes from the show, specifically when Tommy got the White Ranger power. And then it returns to the movie and you finish it up there. And it intersperses the Zord combat quite nicely. The challenge is right on for the Power Rangers audience of that time and not too hard. You know, I could pick it up anytime and play. It's a good time. I think it's the best Power Rangers game. There's one for Xbox that's like chibi Power Rangers and it's quite shit. It should have been better. You know, I'm going to say Sonic CD for number 5. I like Sonic CD. It doesn't touch Sonic 2. It doesn't touch Sonic 3 and Knuckles, but it's a hell of a lot better than 1, which does not appear on this list. I like Sonic 1, but I don't like it as much as Castlevania or Virtual Bart, okay? Sonic CD's got killer music, pretty good graphics, this incredibly impressive animated... The credits of Sonic CD in particular, you get animated sequences of levels you just played. Loved it. You know, I don't really care for the time traveling shit. I avoid it. They make it seem like the only way to get the official good ending is if you go back in time and fix the future, but you get the exact same ending if you just win all the time gems in the special stages. And I think the special stages are cool, by the way.
Oh, they are. They're very cool.
Didn't Sega Lord X?
His like least favorite Sega things video, he put that on there.
The sprite scaling wasn't up to snuff.
You may be sitting there with a big WTF look on your face at this choice, but I stand by it. Sonic CD is without question the worst use of scaling on the Sega CD.
In the pantheon of 2D Sonic games, I think it's up there.
Question, is this the last Sega CD game you have?
Yes.
Because you didn't mention 2 games you're going to get comments about. 1, Snatcher.
Never played it. Does it have a nudity code in it?
I mean, there is nudity. There's no code, but you see somebody's bare ass. That's about it.
What's it called? Snatcher.
Snatcher's incredible. I would recommend Snatcher. It's like watching an 8-hour sci-fi movie. 2, Night Trap.
Oh, well, sure. I mean, I'm very charmed by Night Trap, and I have it on the Genesis Mini 2. I love playing the Genesis Mini 2 because I have those 8-bit-do 6-button controllers, the wireless ones. I'm convinced that those are the best Genesis controllers money can buy.
Mini 2, almost awesome, but doesn't have Snatcher. That's the only Sega CD game like anybody wants to play.
You know, I like the Android Assault. I've talked about that before.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know Flink? It was really a big Amiga game.
What about Kyo Flying Squadron?
Yeah, it's fun for 5 minutes before you die. All right. Last 4. These are all winners for me. Aladdin. Didn't own it as a child. It won me over by middle school or so. I remember when our friend Keith, he thought he might develop a Box Mac video game. I just kept talking about how it should be like Aladdin for Genesis. It's very inventive. Graphics are amazing. Plays really nicely. Captures the spirit of the movie. It's got a Mario 2 style gambling in between levels. It's got the Abu mini games after the level. I mean, it's just great. And I believe it was their top selling game for the system after.
I think so.
Quintessential Genesis game. Nobody would argue with that one.
Why did Sega never, or Virgin Games for that matter, why were they never able to get anywhere close to that?
I think because a lot of the team left to make Earthworm Jim.
And Earthworm Jim does play quite a bit like Aladdin. All right, next up, World of Illusion with Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck.
The game is beloved. I just don't get it. Any like top Genesis list that's on there.
World in particular?
Well, they're the same game in my head.
Yeah, to me, they're not. Castle obviously wrote the book for it. So the idea is that Mickey and Donald are magicians. They use their cape for their attack. In Castle of Illusion, you jump on heads and you throw apples. I think they were actually trying to get away from even that level of violence. The graphics really captured the Disney-ness so nicely, much the way Aladdin does. Like Mickey and Donald have never looked better, I think. Maybe in Mickey Mania, he looks better, but Donald's there too. You can play co-op, and if you play co-op, you get a pretty different game, different levels. You always start in the same first level, but then the fact that you can lift each other up means that you can get to places you couldn't get in single player. Means you can play entirely different levels. The same is true if you play individually as Donald or individually as Mickey. Mickey can crawl under things that Donald can't because Donald's got a big ass that won't fit through things. That means he has to go different ways. It's fairly short. It's fairly easy. It's got like a sense of humor, a playfulness about it. It's got great music. Yeah, I think it's like a great Genesis game, a great 16-bit game. I'd recommend it to anybody. I'll complain about one thing. On the 3-button controller, C jumps, B waves your cape, so that's your attack, and if you hold A, you run.
Oh, that's awkward.
Yeah, if you want to run and jump, you have to do this shit.
Yeah, Mario figured that out long ago.
Sonic didn't even try that. They're just like, he's always running.
And all the buttons do the same thing.
Exactly.
That brings us to my very first Genesis game I ever played. The reason I got a Genesis was because I had a friend in my second grade class who had gotten a Genesis for that Christmas. And so I was like, I think I want one too. And I started to hear about the Sonic guy. I had a Model 2. I missed Altered Beast and Strider.
I was going to grill you on no Strider after. I guess I won't now.
I'm not impressed by Strider.
Honestly, I'm not either, but I remember like a long time ago, you've brought up like Screw Attack and their top 10s. When they made a top 10 Genesis video, they put that number 1.
I did pick it up at a used game shop, mostly because I like the arc blade thing that is going on.
Yeah.
It's cool. And then after that, yeah, I don't want to play it.
There is a PlayStation game, Strider 2. That's fucking fun. So Sonic 2 was my first ever Genesis game. It actually took maybe at least a year before I played Sonic 1 and was disappointed. Sonic 2's got it all figured out, man. It's got great levels. They know how that fast Sonic action now works, so their levels complement it, whereas in the first one, really only Green Hill Zone did.
And then you hit a wall and the game sucks. It's like you gotta patiently wait for platforms to like go over lava, and it's like they just don't get Sonic.
In Sonic 1, they stick you in water way too often.
Oh, yeah.
Sonic 2 has a different strategy, which is staying elevated in the level is challenging, But if you can do it, you'll avoid annoying things like water and low-level enemies and stuff like that. So
It keeps you moving a lot more than one.
I think the Robotnik enemies are more inventive. The music is better. It's got Chemical Plant Zone.
Yeah.
It's got a vibrance to it. Sometimes people will say that Sonic 2 is the best Sonic game, and I respect that opinion. It's Sonic at the peak of his powers.
Okay, it has tails, so that's cool. Tails, two tails. Yeah.
Tails, a fox, two tails, cool.
The special stages are pretty good. The biggest problem there is that if you choose the default and you have the Tails AI,
Yeah, because he loses all his rings.
you have to get rid of him. Goodbye. Tails, two tails, not cool. This is the first time you see a Metal Sonic, not the Metal Sonic from Sonic CD, but you get a Metal Sonic.
Is that really a different character?
I think he's called like Cyborg Sonic or something. He has like a different name.
And I think Super Sonic is introduced, right?
Yes, this is the first time you get to play Super Sonic, which is it's kind of like the Dark Knight of Sonics. You know, it's where things really start to move. And then finally, I'm going to just say Sonic 3 and Knuckles.
That's the game.
Everything that we just described about Sonic 2 and then a whole lot more. It's the thing that allowed Sonic to be opened up to something greater than a mascot platformer. Even its kind of minor 16-bit 2D story moments.
Oh, dude, those are awesome. Those go such a long way.
And really, Sonic Mania is based on Sonic 3 and Knuckles.
Oh, yeah. It's the next like logical step after that.
So I'm a huge Sonic fan. To this day, like I'm rooting for Sonic when he comes out with new games. I always try them. I'm almost always disappointed with the 3D ones. I love Sonic Adventure, and I like Sonic Adventure 2. I recently was trying to play Heroes again, and I was like struggling.
That game's terrible. That's one of my least favorite Sonics.
All right, man. Did I leave any stone unturned?
Yes. Well, RPGs, I'm writing them off. You're not going to talk about Shadowrun. You're not going to talk about Shining Force. They deserve to be there, but they're not for you, and I'll accept that. But first, I guess, Rystar. Why no Rystar?
Yeah, I've played that game. Oh, Rocket Knight Adventures probably belongs in here somewhere. Too,
that too.
That's a good game. It's just a little hard. Rystar, I've gotten through a couple of levels in it, and I didn't really vibe with it.
You know, I played Echo the Dolphin as a kid, and I was just like, what the heck is this?
To this day, I don't get the Echo the Dolphin.
Here's one I'm a little surprised didn't come up. Lightning Force, a.k.a. Thunder Force 4.
I don't like shmups.
Oh, I thought you were into shmups.
I can get into a shmup if I must.
All right.
If I must. I think those games are fun for 5 minutes.
I agree until you die and then it sucks. Here's one that surprised me. I didn't expect to see it until I Googled like lists and it was on basically every single top 10 list. Monster World 4.
Oh, I've never even touched it until recently.
Well, because it didn't come out in America originally. It was just Japan and Europe, I think.
I like the graphics. I sort of like those games. But to be honest with you, I went through maybe 20 screens and then hit a dead end and said, I guess I'll have to go backwards now. Wasn't happy about that. These are the things that turn me off from games. Whereas if I'm Bart Simpson as a baby flying on my own diaper, pretty happy.
I guess I only have one left, and it for me is the quintessential want to like it because it's such an amazing concept, great graphics. Can't believe it wasn't mentioned. Comic Zone.
Yeah, I can't get into Comic Zone.
It's in the basket of too fucking hard.
It has kind of like a puzzle solving aspects to it that I think were too hard too.
I liked Cheeky Cheeky Boys. That's a cool Sega game. A little too hard, but I like the graphics. I like the play style. Yeah, that belonged in here somewhere. All right. Well, Jason, where can people find you?
You know, Gaming Productions, you've talked about him. I'm the dollar store version of that.
Right before the show, I watched the Mario RPG. I vibe with it a lot more because I like how it's sincere.
I don't do like general topics. I always do specific games that I dig into that specific game. In a lot of like retro like RPG and like gaming stuff, they'll just be like the top 10 blah blah blah, and it's like did the guy even play the game? We don't know.
Yeah, and even like in your Breath of Fire take, I thought that you had a lot of good insights that I haven't heard before.
Jason did a top 100 NES games of all time. That's an hour and a half. It's one of those kind of high effort videos.
And just like put it on, listen to it in the background.
I thought it was a ton of fun, and it's nicely time coded in the description. And Jason takes a lot of pride in his work, and he does really good work. You should all totally subscribe to him. And yeah, and if you want to get his take on AVGN, you can find that there.
No, don't watch those. Those videos suck.
Well, hey, thanks for joining.
For the content, man. Thanks for having me on. Bye.